Welcome to The Pulse on Downtown FTL. Coming to you 45 stories up at the penthouse in 100 East Las Olas, downtown Fort Lauderdale's tallest residential building. We're here today to talk about the evolving residential real estate market and what it's like to live in downtown Fort Lauderdale. It's hard to believe 20 years ago there were virtually no towers in downtown, hardly any residents, and today we have over 25,000 strong living and loving downtown Fort Lauderdale's lifestyle. So much growth has been planned, and now it's being realized, and the amenities that make living in a subtropical urban environment so spectacular are starting to come to life. I'm so excited to be joined by Jason Amato, one of downtown Fort Lauderdale's newest residents. We'll hear a little bit about why Jason chose downtown Fort Lauderdale over other hot cities around the country, and what makes living in downtown unique. You enjoy this view?
Oh, love it. I get to see it every day.
I know. So tell us about yourself.
So I'm originally from Chicago. I'm married with two 21-year-old daughters, one of which is the reason why we ended up moving down here. But we were in Chicago, and my current employer, I was coming down here for work. And my one daughter really, wanted to come to Florida to go to school and, get her education. And she ended up coming down to the University of Miami. When we were deciding to move down here, we would see our daughter on Instagram, all these pictures and this beautiful weather. And my wife and I are sitting back in Chicago when it was negative 37 degrees, wondering, why are we still here? So we literally just said, look, we really want to take this opportunity to potentially move. Now that the girls are in school and establishing themselves, we want to take this as an opportunity to look to, where else we might want to live that would fit our, working lifestyles at that point in our life. And we ended up here in Fort Lauderdale.
That's a great story. And it's so relevant to how many couples or individuals came down, kids out of the house, maybe left their suburban home, moved downtown. But a lot of that's changing. Now, young professionals like your daughters are moving in here too. It's a wonderful mix of all different generations, really enjoying this lifestyle. You found Fort Lauderdale. She's in Miami. What made you come about 30 minutes north of Miami?
So when we were in Chicago, we lived in the West Loop, and this was an area years ago. It was one of those places where you would pass through it, but you would never really stop there. There wasn't a lot there. And then it eventually got very developed with restaurants and bars and hotels. And as we were looking all throughout South Florida, we knew we wanted to be in South Florida. We just didn't know specifically where. Going as far as, I guess we can call West Palm, South Florida,
sure,
Southeast Florida, and then down to Miami. And one of the things that we really loved about Fort Lauderdale is it felt a lot like what some of the areas I was familiar with and we were familiar with, the Chicago was at one point in the past. And we came here, and the fact that in this particular area, you can walk everywhere, which we're used to. In Chicago, you don't really drive. You use public transportation or you walk. And we felt that this was kind of a mini version of where we live there. We love the condo lifestyle. That's what we actually had there. We love being able to walk to restaurants. Being close to the beach is a huge plus. And then, of course, this building was beautiful, and this is how we ended up. We ended up here.
So access is easy. It sounds like there's this unique mix of uses that you get to take advantage of. What was it about 100 East Las Olas that really drove you to this location?
Couple things, actually. It's a great question because we get it a lot from people that are looking to move here. The first thing is the location, right? I mean, when you think about where this building is located, you can essentially get to anything, whether it be a train, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be an airport. You can get just about anywhere to any, current existing public transportation and or entertainment venues in the neighborhood. Everything is extremely walkable. I mean, I know some people go by the walkable scores that you see online, and this is like a 90-some walking score.
Almost can't be beat.
Yeah, you can't. You have nothing. There's nowhere you can work out here. You could grocery shop here. You can eat. You can drink. You can do anything here. And we love that ability of not having to take our car out to have to go places. So we love that. So location was a big part of it.
So we talk a little bit about this pendulum shift between kind of hot and cold, Miami, Palm Beach, the different energies that both cities have. Some, a little more exciting, a little more reserved. And Fort Lauderdale seems to hit right in the middle. And that's kind of what I heard you say. You get the best of both. You get to still travel to experience anything you need, north or south. You talked about public transit, about not using your car. What are some of the ways that you do get around besides your feet?
So one of the things that I do, even at my age, is I ride a scooter. So I own a little electric scooter that I cruise around, lock it up if I want to go have some food or whatever. And I don't want to get the car out. I take a scooter. But public transportation wise, the Bright Line. I mean, the Bright Line is a huge advantage. And another reason, like living here, we were told about that train when we moved here, even though it was shut down at the time. But it's such a great public transportation method to have to get to Miami, which now you've got Boca and Aventura. But to get to West Palm and Miami, it's a 3-block walk and then a 30-minute train ride. And we don't have to worry about driving because, as you know, many people know, the traffic here is a lot at times. So the Bright Line is a great way to get around down.
It certainly is. It's been a game changer. And as more residents come to live in these urban centers along the East Coast, it's really going to create even more demand for smaller scale mass transit, light rail. With the penny tax investments that are being made, you know, we hope to see this whole ecosystem of mass transit. So besides your scooter, your feet, and the train, we'll have many more ways to get around downtown.
Great to hear.
You know, living in a community is a lot about the physical space, your home, you know, the streets, but it's really the soul of a city is the people who live there. So, you know, you come in here new. How do you get engaged in the community? What's the social scene like living in downtown Fort Lauderdale?
Great question. That's one of the things that when we first moved here, we were most concerned about. We knew nobody, with the exception of our one daughter at UN. And that was something we were thinking about, like, what is our social life going to be like? Within days of moving in, and that's one of the advantages of living in a condo, is you meet people in the elevator or in the lobby or in the parking garage. And we met so many amazing people really early on, and we hang out with all of these people today. So this particular building, like, there's so many people that get along. We hang out like in people's units. We all go out to dinner to the various restaurants and things in the area. But we have met, some of our closest friends now just from being in this building, because so many people are not from Florida here. They're from New York. They're from New Jersey, some from the Midwest. And a lot of them are in the same situation as us. Our children aren't here. So we've spent a lot of time with a lot of the people in this building. And that is truly what's made this place even better. Outside of just the physical aspect of the unit and the building, it's the people. Like, the people here have been amazing. And same when you're out on the street. That was the other thing when you asked me earlier, how do you choose Fort Lauderdale? It was the people. Like, no matter where you go around here, even outside of our building, the people are amazing, friendly. It almost feels as if we were still in the Midwest, where everyone says the Midwest is so, friendly. People here have been amazing, no matter where you go. And that, for us, made us feel extremely welcomed. And that's why we're still loving it here a year and a half.
That's what really makes, I think, living anywhere special is when you have a neighborhood feel, even in an urban area, that safety, that security, that interaction with other people who love the city as much as you do.
So important.
Good.
So important.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to keep talking with you and hearing about all your great experiences as you continue to live in downtown Fort Lauderdale.
Thank you again for having me. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Now I'm joined by Ken Krasnow with Colliers International. We'll be discussing the long-term residential real estate trends that are driving downtown Fort Lauderdale's success. All right, we're back.
We are.
And here we're going to talk about living in downtown Fort Lauderdale, who's building, what projects are coming.
It is an exciting time to be talking about that.
It is. Any big surprises, or do you think this was all really part of the plan?
Well, I think the biggest surprise is, we're sitting here on the 45th floor. And as you mentioned, a number of years ago, there were no real high rises. And now we're looking at roughly a dozen projects that are going to be 40 stories or taller. So we're really talking about a skyline shaping dynamic in the market, which I don't know that people were really thinking about, 10, 20 years ago.
And if you've been here 10, 20 years, you've got to experience this whole city grow up right before your very eyes. It's pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. But also, if you're new, we want to help tell the story of what's coming and how you're going to stay part of this wonderful community. So tell us a little bit about the projects that have recently come out of the ground, what some of the, trends are, how we compare to our peer cities around.
It's exciting. I think Fort Lauderdale, the evolution of Fort Lauderdale, for years, we've talked about the South Florida region as, a collective region with our brethren to the north and to the south of us. It's interesting to see that with all of the growth that we've had over specifically the last 5 years, the number of units that we've added into this market, we're basically now on par with Miami in terms of total number of units in the downtown.
And that's for rental units.
Yes. What's exciting now is, this was really the only, we're in 100, East Las Olas. This was really the only condo project that's been delivered in the last decade. but there are approximately 6 condo projects as we speak being delivered into this market. So that adds a whole new dynamic and a new element of people that are, truly rooted and invested in this community. Half of the new projects that are being delivered in Flagler Village, just, to the north of us here. And that is an interesting dynamic that an evolution of a city needs to have. People go to New York or Chicago and you think of downtown Chicago. But if you're in Chicago, you know that there's River North and you know that there are these various neighborhoods. Same thing in Midtown Manhattan. Murray Hill and Hell's Kitchen are 2 very different neighborhoods, and you're starting to see that take shape in Fort Lauderdale.
You think about how that resonates with those that are moving here from other cities and neighborhoods within larger cities, very unique aspects and characteristics, the way the boroughs of Manhattan and greater New York almost appeal like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach. Talk a little bit about, with the new investments that are being made, how those level of amenities are starting to change. What are residents expecting when they come to either rent or buy in downtown Fort Lauderdale?
Well, again, I think, there was a recent report that came out with regards to, ULI and PwC put out this report every year, and they talk about, global cities around the world. And Fort Lauderdale is now in the conversation with truly iconic, what they call 18-hour cities around the globe. People that are moving into those kind of communities expect a certain level of amenity.
It speaks highly when 6,000 new residents in the past 2.5 years have chosen to make downtown their home. We've seen, about an 80% growth in population since 2010. So clearly it's working and it's only getting better.
And when you start to see our density, population density, the concentration of what makes a city a walkable community, exceeding places like Austin and Nashville, cities that people are synonymous with activity and bustling and connectivity, and you see Fort Lauderdale surpassing them.
And with all of this, new population growth, as you said, it's that cycle that kind of helps create the sustained progress. As people live here, more businesses open, more shops, the amenities that serve them. It was just tremendous to see, moving vans and people all of a sudden walking. We used to joke that there can't be a time of day or day of the week at the intersection of 3rd Avenue and Las Olas where people were not waiting to cross the street. So there's definitely a sense that we've arrived. But also children, you mentioned families. There's been about a 70% increase in the number of families with children that have moved into downtown. So I think you're right. It's about providing that ecosystem. Great cities have 0 to 100 living in them, and that's really what we're looking.
It's very noticeable, as I mentioned before, that 18-hour moniker that is now attached to Fort Lauderdale means that, when the workday ends in the downtown, you're expecting to see, people pushing baby carriages and walking with their kids to the park or taking their scooter, and you're sensing a true sense of community, as opposed to a downtown that used to be synonymous with just work.
A very central, connected district.
No question.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of The Pulse on Downtown FTL, where we're reaching new heights with residential real estate. Follow us at DDA FTL to stay tuned for all great things coming our way in downtown Fort Lauderdale.